Hello everyone, my name is the Artificial DM. So today I have another viewer submitted story. This one is from Painted Dungeon. They also go by Thoughtful Watcher. And they went ahead and sent the story in after listening to some of my horror stories. Anyway, let's jump into it. After listening to some of the D&D horror stories, I can't say this holds candles to most of them. For that, I'm thankful. Nonetheless, here's one of my old World of Darkness tales. If you find them entertaining, feel free to share them with your listeners. Have a great day. Oh, thank you, that's so nice. For those who aren't familiar with it, the World of Darkness is a tabletop RPG, which is set in a gothic punk version of the real world. Werewolf the Apocalypse centers around player characters who are, you guessed it, werewolves. They're rage-filled monsters out to save Mother Earth, one dismembered bad guy at a time. My story is rife with my mistakes as well as those of the player characters. I can safely call this world class Fubar and be grateful that I've become a much better storyteller. In my defense, I was also dealing with a few interesting players. Combine, shake well, pour, and you will have an overflowing cup of grade A disaster. I'll refer to them as their werewolf tribal names for simplification. Cast, me, storyteller. Player, Uktena. Player, Glasswalker, and my best friend, the Fianna player. Setting, a modern gothic punk world mostly like our own. Date in and out of character, early 2000s. I didn't have a session 0 with these players. That was my first mistake. We were an online group meeting in IRC, so I went through the character creation process with everyone either on the phone, email, or in a chat room. They had their sheets and gave me a rough backstory. Uktena decided to go with the optional Native American background. I wasn't experienced in playing with a live group, so I decided to run a pre-printed campaign. White Wolf isn't known for great reprinted content, but it was a rite of passage, so I decided to try it. Everyone told a little about themselves in character. Fianna was from America and Irish descent. Glasswalker was born from 2 werewolves and suffered the social stigma and deformities which went with it. When it came around to Uktena, she proceeded to tell the group how she spent her time hunting buffalo on the plains with a bow. She also took control of one of the NPCs. I was literally stunned by the racist view of indigenous Americans. As the storyteller, I should have taken her aside to do some serious rework of her character. Before I could say anything, Fianna came up with one of the most passive-aggressive pieces of snark I had heard. That's nice. I buy my food at the grocery store like everyone else. I wanted to be the nice storyteller and not hurt any feelings, so I picked my battles. Instead of addressing the racism, I explained that she shouldn't describe the actions of the NPC or speak for them. I should have tackled the rest of it. Today I would have, but it was my mistake. After one session, Uktena and Glasswalker were dubbed the Wonder Wits in my head. The adventure was pretty basic. They show up in an unfamiliar place in the Canadian forest. The people in charge are fooled by the big bad evil gal, and the pack is thrown out to fend for themselves. Ideally, they were intended to stumble over a giant plot hook in a strip mine, do some heroic things to clear their names, then head home. In another adventure, they would deal with the big bad evil gal. The Wonder Wits start rambling around in places that any sane adventurer would have realized was a flashing neon sign over it saying, "Don't!" They encountered some emaciated children with popping frog-like eyes, which glowed with radiation. Their limbs were too long for their bodies, and long, thin fingers were tipped with 3-inch claws, dripping with poison. The Wonder Wits decided to go up with cheery smiles and introduce themselves. This went about as well as you would expect, but I wasn't out to TPK anyone. I hope they learned their lesson, both in and out of character. After all, they were new, right? After session 1, Uktena emails us to ask if we can change the days and times. She joined a LARP, and it would interfere with her schedule. It wasn't a big deal to change, so we did. Another session passes, and Uktena emails again to ask us to change days and times. She's enrolled in a jewelry making class, and the game time isn't good for her. Fianna and I are starting to get annoyed. She had to rush home from work through traffic to make the new time. Really wanting to play, she said she'd do it. By this time, the Wonderwits had dug themselves into a hole so deep, I'm not sure what to do anymore. Fianna has given up trying to get them to do anything sensible and is ready to roll a new character. The minions of Big BEG have caught them blundering around with targets painting on their fuzzy butts announcing, "Victims here!" Instead of trying for stealth, they crash through everything. They get attacked. I take it easy on them. They learn nothing. Instead of trying to get into a makeshift office where they could have found documents to clear their names, they decided to go into the dank, creepy black pit of corruption where the evil minions live. Both of them are told, out of character, that the evil minions come from places like that, and young Garu never come back out alive. I don't know what Garu means, hang on. Is a term used by the werewolves to identify their race and culture. Anyway, back to the story. Like a pair of bubble-headed welcome wagon reps, they decide to do it anyway. Fiona has given up in character, and spends most of her time saying her character has taken up drinking. I was so frustrated behind the scenes that I exchanged emails with a few D&D players. I outlined the scenario without explaining what was going on in my group. They came back with a dozen different creative ideas on how they would have handled it. All of them were viable, and made me wish I was playing with them instead of the Wonderwits. At least this told me that it wasn't just me, and they really were that dense. I spent a week emailing them back and forth to assure them that their characters didn't have to die. There was still a way out. All they had to do was to figure it out, and they had all week to think it over. The minions had them at gunpoint, loaded with silver, and were about to kill them. The pack was outnumbered and outgunned due to the string of very bad in-character decisions. The answer was to run for it. That's all they had to do, and I was confident they would figure it out. Optimism springs eternal, and got steamrolled by a giant dose of reality. They decided to fight. I rolled the dice publicly, and TPK'd them within 2 rounds. Had it been today, I would have done something like had them get captured, possibly tortured. The minions would have tried to turn them into recruits, or I'd have embellished the story as they strayed off the rails. Back then, I was sticking more religiously to the pre-printed book. In hindsight, I'm not sure it would have helped, but Fiona would have had a better time. New characters were in the works, but the game time conflicted with something else in Utena's social life. I gently told her that her time was her own, but it didn't sound like she had room for gaming with us. She agreed and dropped out. That was the last I heard from her. Glasswalker stuck around for a while, but we didn't roleplay with her anymore. Eventually she, too, faded out of our lives. Fiona and I became such close friends in the years following that we were like family. The last time I saw her was when I stayed with her for 3 weeks in the hospital. She was fighting cancer. It was a year-long battle that she sadly didn't win, and I'll always miss her. I'm happy to say that a few years ago, I replayed the same adventure with a new group. None of them tried to adopt glowy-eyed frog children, or cavort in creepy corruption pits. They played intelligently, and I improvised as needed, the way a good storyteller should. Eventually, they even followed up on the plot hook, and defeated Big Bad Evil Gal with a creative use of explosives. TLDR. Inexperienced storyteller and dense players collide in World of Darkness Fubar. Real-life schedule conflicts save the day. I believe this story just goes to show that sometimes players have a different expectation than what us storytellers have. I'm glad that overall, OP was able to run their game eventually, even though it didn't happen ideally with the same group of friends that they wanted to run the games with. Once again, thoughtful watcher, thank you so much for sending this story to me, and my condolences for the loss of your friend. I know my words don't mean much in relation to losing a friend to cancer, but I can sympathize for you. And I am glad that you were able to grow a friendship with that player. If you have any stories that you would like to tell, go ahead and share them with me on one of my social medias or even by email. And if you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, because it really helps me out. That's all for today, and until next time, hope you feel inspired.